Hey Grinderschool, welcome back. This is CodeRed Rules, and today I'm going to be reviewing some hands from the latest Grinderschool Cash Series, which was on Lock Poker. We didn't have too large of a turnout, but I will be going over some hands here, and let's go ahead and get started. The first hand I'm going to go over is between Bear and Pyratos. Now, there was I don't know if there was 4 of us or 5 of us on this table at this time. We're playing 4-L, full ring. And let's go ahead and start the hand back over again. Alright. I folded Jack Queen suited here under the gun, which is just fine. Pyratos opens under the gun +2 and gets 3-bet by Bear. Now, the first thing I'm going to say here at Bear is this 3-bet size is atrocious. Doesn't matter if it's a bluff or for value. You don't want to be making it. You could, some people argue that it's for value, so I'm going to make this raise size. And maybe you're not familiar with the software. I mean, that's understandable too. You should be trying to make it about 10 big blinds here if you're making a re-raise, going from 3 to 10, maybe 3 to 11, so 40, 44 cents. Along that lines, you could do 50 cents, although I think 48 cents is going to be a little much. You don't have to go that high. I think 40 cents is going to be just fine. And the reason why this is not a very good 3-bet for value is because we give our opponent too good of odds to draw, and then with a pocket pair. So if we had aces here, not a very good hand because first off, what are we re-raising under the gun razor with? Other than hands like aces and kings for the most part. And so our opponent's going to have high implied odds to draw out on us with a lot of his hands, especially when we're more willing to pay off, 1, when we have aces, and 2, when it's in a re-raised pot. So it's not a great hand. It's not a great way to do it for value, and definitely not good for a bluff because who folds to this re-raise size? You know what I mean? The reason why people make this re-raise size is to get calls, not to get a fold. So it's a min re-raise. It's not going to be profitable for you, and it could be a misclick, but it's up in the. I don't. If it wasn't a misclick, then I have a serious problem with the way this went down. All right, and Pyratos is going to be calling, regardless of probably the raise size that you make it at this point. So the fact that you made 24 cents, it makes it look like he's going to be calling, but he's going to be calling people's re-raises, pretty much all the time here. So, alright. We get on this flop, right? We know that Pyratos is called. We got to figure out what are we going to be doing if we're Bear. Alright, if we're doing this if we re-raise for value pre-flop, alright, then we must be betting in the situation to protect our hand. With an exception of maybe if we have ace king as hearts, but at that point we need to be betting so we can build the pot so we can get the money in. Alright, so regardless of what hand that we have here, we need to be betting for value. Now, if we're betting as a bluff, okay, if we have a bluff, which we really shouldn't be having given the re-raise size pre-flop, but if we do have a bluff, then we need to be betting this flop to try to take it down. Our opponent is going to have a hard time making any kind of a play on this board unless he has a strong hand. He's going to be folding to a lot of aggression. Or just give up. Let's say he has a hand like pocket 4s or 5s without the heart, alright, a baby pair. He's going to be better off probably just folding against your hand range, not really knowing where you're going to be at. And the same thing can be said with even, I wouldn't say 8s or 9s. I think he would probably still call 8s or 9s on this board, even without a heart. But the lower pairs and stuff, you can get a fold. Better ace highs if he has ace jack or ace queen without a heart. He'll be folding those hands. So in reality, I will probably be betting here with most, if not all of my hands, with an exception to maybe if we had 7x here or 8s or 9s with a heart. If we had the heart, then we could very easily just take the free card, be not worried about the flusher coming in because we'll be able to pick off a bluff very easily. If we didn't have a heart and we had 8s or 9s, I don't know why we would be in a situation with 8s or 9s on this board. Given the fact that it's a larger pot, we'll probably be wanting to kind of turn our hand into a bluff, and hopefully he folds, which is not usually something I recommend, so maybe I'm going to go back on that and still have to check behind, but it's tough to give our opponent a free card to a flush draw that could beat us with so many outs, which is why I'd like to bet. Docker Bear, you guys just go ahead and check it down. Oh wait, you bet the turn. So let me go through what your line portrays. All right, you re-raise pre-flop, you're representing extreme strength. Okay, you check the flop, you represent extreme weakness, and then misbetting on the turn, it doesn't mean anything, right? Because you wouldn't be betting like a lower pair, you wouldn't even have a lower pair. You're almost exclusively having a bluff here all the time. It's very rare for you to have any kind of a value hand in this situation, given the line that you're taking. In order for you to really think about this, and hopefully you're doing this with your opponents as well before making a call, like what would he be doing this with? Why would he re-raise pre-flop and then check the flop on such a crappy board? And then why is he now betting this turn half pot? Like, it's such a weak sauce bet that you're not going to get any credit. And hopefully you would think that if your opponent was doing that, then you would not give him any credit, and at the same time avoid making such plays for yourself too. And as you can see here, Pyrotos calls with the offsuit fours. Now Pyrotos, his play was very standard. You know what I mean? He raises pre-flop, he gets min re-raise. Of course, he's calling with the fours. He gets a free card on the flop. You know, he knows you don't have anything. You weak bet the turn, he calls it. So I mean, Pyrotos here played it perfectly, which is something I don't usually say very often. If you guys ever watch these videos, the Docker though, you had ace 3 offsuit, so you were bluffing pre-flop. Well, you should be raising larger. You should be betting the flop, especially, and then probably giving up after that. And making your bluffs a little larger too would, on the flop, would be more beneficial because you don't plan on barreling a future street. So I would also probably not be bluffing Pyrotos in these games all that often, just because I know him and I know how he plays, and he likes to have a lot of fun, so he intentionally does some crazy things he wouldn't normally do in his normal games, and he has. So I wouldn't be bluffing him here, and especially wouldn't be re-raise bluffing him with such a small raise size. All right, so I'm gonna be right back with the next hand. Alright, in this hand, Doc Bear has King-Queen offsuit, even though you can't see it in this hand history. I had some problems with the hand history player, both loading up and then trying to combine the lock poker hand histories together in order to create a feasible situation for you guys. We're working on that in the background, but I want to get these video out to you guys real quick. So, anyway, Doc Bear has King-Queen offsuit in this situation, and we go back here. Under the gun limps, we have a guy who posted dead in the cutoff, which, guys, by the way, you're going to see a lot on lock poker right now. You see a lot of guys who are new to the game, new to the poker site, not yet familiar with the software, and they post dead a lot. And it's very confusing the way they have the system set up. I'm not going to deny that. Until you figure out how to not post dead all the time, you should really be taking advantage of your opponents posting dead all the time too. I mean, it's a great way to make the extra big blinder. So even if you do it once every 100 hands, that's one big blind per 100. It's an easy win on your win rate there. So anyway, Doc Bear here, you have King-Queen offsuit and big blind facing under the gun limp, and the dead poster. You should be raising here for value with a very wide range. I'm thinking King-Queen, King-Jack, Queen-Jack, probably 8s are better, minimum maybe even 7s, Ace-10 are better. You know, I mean, we're pretty much isolating them, and we're doing it out of position. I've also found that these guys fold to C-bets a lot, at least 25 analysis, 4NL, so I'm not sure if it's going to relate. But with a hand like King-Queen, you're definitely doing it for value, because you're going to be value timing your opponent's post-flop. All right, let's see here. We checked, and then if we did raise pre-flop, and then we see this flop, we would be checking it down. Probably wouldn't be value betting. If we had the king of clubs here, we could potentially be value betting, although it's probably a little too thin. Still, I would just keep checking to induce a bet. And then once we hit the queen on the river, we're going to be value betting like you did. So I feel by raising it pre-flop, you're actually going to be able to get more value from it post-flop too. And we're raising for value pre-flop. So definitely be making this raise. And you guys should be doing this not only in position to isolate, right? Isolation of your opponents is almost a specific term for, you're doing it with a very wide range as a bluff, right? But you can do out of position too when we're doing it for value. In fact, I usually only recommend you guys isolate raising out of position and when you're doing it for value. So your Broadway cards, especially some of your stronger Broadway cards, King Queen though against these guys is going to be a favorite. So I like to see you start raising that up more. All right, so I'm going to go on to the next hand. All right, and here we are back on the next hand. Bear is in the big blind. We're playing four-handed right now while we're just loading up the tables. Jeffrey limps in the small blind, which depending on what hand he has, but Jeffrey has 6-3 suited here, which is arguably an okay play. I'm not going to go into that one. But Bear here actually has Jack 5, 2 pair on this flop. And I actually recently had a session with Bear, and one of his problems was slow playing a lot. And this is an example where we need to be raising this guy up. Not only what will a raise do, well, a raise is going to get value from a flush draw, it's going to get value from worse aces. Here's the thing, what is Jeffrey betting here? Okay, when Jeffrey leads this flop, he's doing it with 1 ace-x, 2 flush draws, 3 complete air. Alright, so by raising, we get value from ace-x and flush draws, and he's not going to be giving us too much value anyway with his air. So therefore, when we have the 2 pair on this board, let's go ahead and just value raise. I'll probably make it around 20 cents. We need to be building the pot. We need to be trying to get stacks in. Now, I mean, if he comes like over the top of us and 3-bets us, that's going to be a sign of him having a stronger hand. Probably 2 pair, maybe a set. I mean, along those lines. So we could very easily raise, and if we get 3-bet, we'll slow down a lot. We'll call the 3-bet, probably fold the turn if he bets again big. But what happened was, we call the flop, and then once the ace pairs, our hand no longer is really all that good. It becomes now bottom 2, 2 pair, no kicker. And we could call again here, and I think it's going to be alright, just because our opponents could still be like betting and barreling a flush draw. However, once the flush draw gets there on the river, we've got to give our opponent credit and just be like, all right, well, if he had a draw, his draw got there. Chances are he's not going to be just doing this with king high, 3 streets or whatever. And my kicker doesn't play. I would go ahead and fold in this situation. So to recap, raise the flop here with the 2 pair with the Jack 5. Slow down once you have a really weak pair, and then give up on the river when the draw gets there. Alright, we'll be right back with the next hand. Alright, so in this hand is actually a play, or a hand that I played. And it's not very often that I get to critique my own hands on this site, or at least talk about maybe why I did it, and probably not do it again in the future. I go ahead and call the 4s out of position, which against Bear, I think is an okay play. I'm not really doing this for set value, although if the board comes pretty bad, like Ace King X, something like that, 2 over, or 2 Broadway cards, I'm probably just going to be letting it go to a continuation bet. When it comes to 3 undercards like this, I expect my opponent to be value betting really only the stronger pairs, like 9x, 10s are better. And everything else is going to be taking a free card. And he's also going to be betting here with a lot of bluffs. So I feel like his value betting range isn't very much, but he's going to be doing this with a lot of bluffs. So I can check call once, reevaluate on the turn. If I turn a 5 for the open-ender or a spade for the flush draw, I'll probably call 1 more street. So I call it here, and then Bear goes ahead and checks it behind. And so right now my read is indicative of, well, he doesn't have a 9. So he's either got 10s or better, or he's got really nothing. Nothing includes ace high. He could have a draw. Once the draw misses, right, and he has in the 3 pairs, I go ahead and bet 40 cents. Now, why do I bet 40 cents here? Is it to get folds for my opponent? And the answer is no. I'm trying to value bet in this situation, trying to value bet thinly. And what I'm trying to get value from is random ace highs. I don't know if Bear is going to call with ace high, but I felt like the probability of Daka having an overpair here to be very slim, even though he'd be correct to not bet it on turn. It depends on the overpair. If he had like aces and kings, and perhaps queen, he's probably okay to keep betting on the turn. If he had tens and jacks, he probably is better off to go ahead and take the free card. The thing is, like, once the board pairs, I'm going to be calling with a wider range too. You know, I mean, sevens and eights I'm going to be calling with. I feel like I'm more comfortable with them now because I feel like it's harder for my opponent to have a 9. So I'll be calling with a little bit wider. So I don't think he can check behind 100% of his hand. So I feel like he no longer has jacks, queens, or he no longer has queens, kings, or aces. He still could have tens and jacks, or he's going to have a lot of air. And yeah, he folds a lot of his air when I bet here, but he might call me with ace high too because I'll be value betting thin. I'll also be bluffing here with a lot of my missed flush draws. So I expect to get looked up quite a bit. Looking back on the hand, given I know the result, am I okay with the way, you know what I mean, with my thought process here? If I had to do over it again, would I continue to value bet? And I'm up in the air on this scenario. I feel like if I check and my opponent bets, I'm going to have a harder decision to make because my opponent can value bet me thinner, knowing that I checked 3 straights and I have a weaker hand. I'm still really up in the air. I don't dislike my value bet here. I feel like he has a lot of air. My reasoning is sound. It's probably going to be pretty close. But I felt like if I have sevens in this situation, like, I think the stronger my pair is, the more apt I should be to value bet. And the weaker my hand is, say like if I had missed flush draw, or if I had 8 high, if I had queen high or king high, you guys should be bluffing here. To, you know, I mean, first off, your opponent's checking behind a lot of hands he thinks are going to be good. So let your opponent make the tough call on the river with ace high, and you're going to have some fold equity. I wasn't disagreeing the fact that I'm getting a lot of folds from air. When you have air yourself, you want air to fold. I don't have air. I'm looking for hands that call me that aren't air, like ace high and stuff, which, I'm just thinking about this right now, if he has a lot of ace highs, he's probably going to be checking those back on the flop. So let's go on to the next hand. Alright, here's going to be a hand where nothing really happens in the hand, but it's going to allow me to go over a topic that I like to go over with you guys, and that's just taking down pots, right, with just garbage, and betting and building a pot and then taking it down on a later street. So here's an example of that, okay? Going to the end of the hand, we see that Dagobert has 9-3 offsuit. What the hell is he supposed to do with his hand? Well, let's go back to the start of the hand. Guy open limps. We check. Alright, at this point, we're not doing anything. Alright, a lot of you guys, I'm going to bet out here. We don't know what our opponent has. What our opponent act first? If our opponent checks behind, which he does, okay, what can you deduct from that? Well, he probably doesn't have a strong draw. He probably doesn't have a jack. He might have a pair of tens or lower, and he might have a deuce. What can we assume he thinks we have? Well, we can have anything because we could be going for a slow play. We could be going for a check raise. You know, we could also have a marginal hand, or we could just have nothing. All right. So on this turn is a great card for us to bluff. One, it's a flush draw. All right. And why is it a good card for us to bluff? Well, even though we don't have the flush, or we're not drawing the flush, our opponent might be. But how often does the flush come in on the river? Only 20%. So that means when he calls us here on the turn with the flush draw, we're just betting again on the river the entire time, and we're going to be winning the times he calls us when he has flush draw 80% of the time because he's going to be missing his flush draw, right? So we bet the turn here with the expectation that if we get called, we're betting any river possible. Any river. And I mean, that's part of the profitability of the play, whereas we're betting to take down the pot right now, but there's also going to be a very high probability that if we are called, we're going to be able to take it down on the river. So it's therefore like increasing the EV of our play, because not only are we able to bet to take down the 10 cents right now, let's say we were to bet 7 cents here, okay, or 8 cents, 2 big blinds, and our opponent calls us, we're betting the chance to win 10 cents plus the 8 cents our opponent calls us with. So we're actually we're going to be winning 18 cents a lot, or 4 big blinds. So we're betting to take the pot down later, but while also doing so, we increase our EV because our opponent is folding the river how often in situation, given he doesn't have a jack. The only hand he could possibly call us with on the river is a 10. So we're going to have so much fold equity here, either on this street or the next, that our goal is to bet and then bet again when we are called. And what's great about it is it's good to try out in these smaller pots. You guys can do this 3-way, 4-way, 5-way. It works. It doesn't matter how many people are in the pot, as long as the person who was supposed to pre-flop raise checks behind, okay, or doesn't c-bet, right? And then the rest of the table checks behind as well. Okay, so let's take, for example, you have 5 players in the pot here. Under the gun was the player who raised, all right? And we're 5 players, and on his board, he checks all the way around, right? It's the same board. The first person to bet on this hand is going to be the winner, right? Because once the pre-flop raiser checks, all right, the next guy that checks, well, he doesn't have a jack, doesn't have a jack, doesn't have a jack, doesn't have a jack, doesn't have the nuts, doesn't have the nuts, doesn't have the nuts. You know what I mean? Once you can start taking out people that don't have the nuts, you're going to be able to isolate the players who's really going to be calling 2 bets on the turn on the river if they're not willing to value bet their hand themselves. And so you're going to have a very small minority of players that do so. And so really the first person to bet in this scenario, regardless of the hand, is going to win the pot. So bet here, and then if you're called, you bet again on the river. The only hand that you probably wouldn't want to bet again on the river, there's some situations where it's not a good card. Like if the 10 pairs, that's not a good card for us to bet, because I'm trying to think, because we're going to get raised off quite a bit, and we're not going to be very transparent. Likely we're going to be value betting very thinly. But yeah, bet here and then plan to bet again on the river, and you guys are going to be winning a lot of small pots. And that's what that's going to do, is it's going to help increase your red line. And you don't need to have, and it's also going to increase your win rate in the blinds, big blind and small blind. You don't even need to have a hand. 9-3 offsuit here would have won this hand. So one thing I'm going to tell you guys, increase your win rates. You know, I mean, start taking down pots that nobody wants. That includes this one, and that includes when you don't have anything. Okay, when your opponent checks behind here, he doesn't have anything. Go ahead and bet and take it down. All right, so we'll be back with the next hand. All right, welcome back. We have a hand here now that other Grinderschool subscriber back in Spades has played, which I really appreciate him coming out and joining us for the GCS. He raises it up in middle position, and I'm going to go ahead and show you right now that he has Queen 9 of diamonds. All right, Pyrotos calls out of position in the small blind. All right, so Pyrotos checks to us, and we have Queen 9 of diamonds. So what should we be doing with our hand? Should we be value betting? Should we be betting as a bluff? Or should we check behind to induce a bluff? Now, if we're value betting, we have to make sure that there's going to be a significant amount of worse hands that can call us, more than just better hands, right? So hands that can call us, you know, mean that we beat Queen Jack, club draws, open-end straight draws, combo flush draws, even though we don't have that much equity against. Even Queen Jack, we don't have a lot of equity against. And we're not I mean, a lot of is as in like we're like coin flipping, so we're not getting too much value there. I would say the standard play in this scenario with Queen 9 of diamonds would be to go ahead and check behind. All right, we'll be able to induce a bluff from Pyrotos. We're going to be able to pot control. There's a lot of reasons to check. This is going to be really hard for us to get any value from our bet. Now, if it were multi-way here, 3-way, where we can't really afford to give a free card to 2 opponents in this situation, then I would like a bet, because I feel like if we check in that situation, multi-way, we're not going to be able to win the hand nearly as often, and we're going to show a minus EV play as a result. So, multi-way, I would bet here with Queen 9. Back in Spades, you went ahead and continuation bet. I'm not a fan of it. I would only bet a 10 here or better, top pair or better, and any kind of draw that you have. Go ahead and bet those hands. Now, Pyrotos, on the other hand, has 10-9 suited, so he has 2 pair. Alright, well, first off, not a very good hand to be calling out of position with in the small blind. That said, you flop 2 pair on this board. Alright, your opponent's continuation betting, we need to be check raising to build the pot and to get stacks in. Like, nobody gives you credit anyway as it is. You might as well just go ahead and check raise and get some value out of your opponent here. If your opponent's going to be calling any kind of a significant raise, or you're going to get any more value out of him on a later street, he's going to have a hand like jacks or better here in this scenario, which is a lot of scare cards for you that you don't necessarily want to see. Like if the board pairs, if the 6 pairs, 7 and 8, even like hands like an ace and a king aren't necessarily great cards for you. It's going to be really hard for you to be check raising for value later in the hand. So I would go ahead and check raise right now. On the turn, we bank off 2 pair if we are back in spades, which is great. Now we can value bet. Pyretos, this is the reason why we check raise the flop, is because the queen is a scare card for us. There's a lot of combinations of 2 pair and straights that beat us that we're no longer confident that we're ahead of. So yeah, we can check call, that's fine. And on the river, 4 straight bricks out, and everybody shows their cards, and we see that Pyretos missed a flop check raise, and we missed back in spades, was going for a really too thin of a value bet on the flop. So all around, I was going to say the queen 9 of diamonds, guys, is a hand that's too weak to be playing this far out of position. We're under the gun. If we had 10-9 suited or Jack 10 suited, it's going to be okay. I would even fold Queen Jack suited if we were in back of spades spot. So why can't we play 10-9 suited and not Queen Jack suited? Domination is one of them. 10-9 suited is just so much less likely to be dominated than a hand like Queen Jack suited is. People are going to call us behind with like Ace Queen and Ace Jack. Not many people are going to call us with like Ace 10 and Ace 9 when we raise under the gun. So we're going to be dominated a hell of a lot less. Alright guys, we'll be on to the next hand. Alright, so in this hand, I've got critiques for both Jeffrey and back in spades, as you guys both played kind of ridiculous in this situation. So Jeffrey goes ahead and calls in rather than raising. We go ahead and see from our stats here. I mean, I wasn't using a HUD at the time. I only do that only because it's a lot easier for me to edit the hand histories and stuff if I don't already have. How do I say? If I don't already have them imported, I can definitely see the stats on everybody. So I don't use a HUD when I'm playing, but there's no reason for you guys not to use a HUD. And if you guys see that back in spades here is folding the big blind to steal, so far 0 for 2. I'm sorry, he's folded pretty much, what's that, 4 out of 5 times versus a steal. Actually, I don't think you guys can see that. 4 out of 5 times versus a steal. Go ahead and be blind thing up here pretty much until you get a reason not to. But alright, 8 deuce deuce. Let me go ahead here and see what everybody has that I can show you rather than explaining it to you. Jeffrey has 8-6 offsuit, which he limped in the small blind with. He probably should just be folding. And back in spades has 8-4 suited. Alright, so before we get to see how this pot got to $3.44, let's go back. So Jeffrey limps in. We see a flop. Back in spades goes for a bet, and he bets pretty large. Now, it's understandable, all right, to expect our opponent to bet in this scenario with 8x, right? I mean, if he has top pair, I understand the reason why you want to be betting it out. We can get value from flush draws, we can get value from other pairs, ace highs. I wouldn't have gone for this bet size. I think full pot is a little too much. I mean, granted, you only got choice between 4 cents and 8 cents. I probably would have gone for 6 cents. I think there's a 3/4 bet button on there. Would be just fine if you're going to be betting. Honestly, I don't really care for a bet at all. I think if we're multi-way here, we'd want to be betting to protect the hand, not giving a free card. But heads up, I like checking it back and letting my opponent induce a bet. Or rather, an induce a bluff for my opponent, rather. Alright, as played, Jeffrey here, who also has an 8-6, goes for the check raise. It's got to be for value. I don't understand why you want to be bluffing here with 8-6. I don't understand how it could even be possible. So, check raising for value. We got to think about, okay, what's our opponent's going to be calling us with that is worse than 8-6, or 8-6 rather, that's going to be calling. It's almost impossible for him to have a worse ace than ace-6, other than he does right now with the 8-4. All right, and we're going to be getting value from flush draws, but I think we would be better off just go ahead and calling, because we're going to get called by a billion better 8s. All right, the jack comes in, nullifies our kicker. Not that we really care about the kicker anyway, but why are we continue to value bet? All right, I believe at some point we're turning this into, let's go ahead and take the pot down now and call it a day kind of a bet. And I honestly don't understand the value of it. All right, so and then back in spades situation, all right, he's thinking that Jeffrey's full of shit, and so he calls it off. He calls off this bet, which is, I think it's a little overstepping the bounds. I probably would just fold to the check raise in the flop, and I'll see with the 8-4, and just be like, dude, whatever. If you want this pot, it's 4 big blinds. I'm not going to be risking, you know what I mean, an additional, whatever, 10 big blinds on the turn call here to win an additional, that was originally what, your 1 big blind, and then the 2 big blinds you bet to win that big blind. So you were only really invested 4 big blinds. You've gone from that to calling a 5 big blind check raise, I'm sorry, a 7 big blind check raise, additional 5 big blind pot, and then another 10 big blinds here. So I think your mistake is compounding upon itself. At this point, if you see somebody like sitting there trying to, you know, I mean, he wants you to risk an additional 5 big blinds, and you've only put in 3, you got to really think about, all right, is this really worth going after? Because you know you're going to have to call off on the turn, whatever he bets now. So you got to look ahead. I was like, all right, am I calling off on the turn? Like, why would you call here and then fold the turn if you had your hand? It's just kind of strange. I would just fold now with the 8-4, and, you know what I mean, just not even think twice about it, because, all right, if he really wants his hand to check raise to be 7 big blinds, to 7 big blinds, then go ahead and let him have it. But, you know, our mistake is compounding here. We call this bet. Another bet here on the river. You know, we're calling 25 cents, hopefully to split the pot, or 25 big blinds rather, hopefully to split the pot to win 75 cents. So we're risking $1 here to win 75 cents. It's not really plausible and all for you guys to be going through this. I mean, you guys probably paid, I don't know how much in rake to make this play. Both of you guys are playing weird, and I just don't really have anything to say other than why. I can't really. I guess we have a boat here, so I mean a boat, 2 full of 8s, but we are still calling this boat the pot. And then we can see a showdown. I'm just really confused at the way this went down from both players. For both parts, I think Jeffrey has a lot more explaining to do than back in spades, as I kind of put him to a higher threshold. But even still, I mean, if you guys are sitting there playing in your games, right, in a limped pot, and you're willing to risk, in the end of it, 35, 30, actually 40 big blinds overall on an initial 3 big blind investment with just a mediocre hand, you should really be looking into the risk-reward factors that you're really thinking about with the quality of hand and the size of the pot. Be different if you have pocket aces here. Be different if you were in a re-raised pot, right? All those things matter, but I mean, truth comes down to it. It's you put 1 big blind in the pot, you risking 2 to win the 1 back again. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me. All right, guys, I'm going to be going to end the video here. I know it's a short video, but we had a short session. This is CodeRed Rules. Join us next time on Merge Poker. It doesn't matter what network you're using. Which skin you're using for the Merge network. Just go ahead and join in for the Grinderschool Cash Series. The Grinderschool Tournament Series will be on Lock Poker and Lock Poker only. So make sure that when you guys are signing up for Merge, sign up through Lock Poker so you can play the GTS with us and go from there. And that way you can get your hands critiqued and or made fun of and or yelled at by me. There we go. All right, guys. See you guys next time. Good luck at the tables.